For those of you that know me, I am standing on hallowed ground. Hannah gave it away earlier. Glenn told me yesterday that on this very stage, I mean, probably not this wood, ABBA won Eurovision 50 years ago, right? I mean, that's amazing. And I'm really, really glad that a couple of months ago, someone took a chance on me to make it to this conference to talk about whether AI is going to be the super trooper that we all think it is going to be, or whether the designers are all going to call SOS. Right, I'm going to skip all the ABBA jokes. That's all I could do. ChatGPT gave me a few pointers here. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Phil Bonhard. I head up experience design at Lloyd's Banking Group for mortgages. You might have also seen me as minion number 347 in The Rise of Gru. I like yellow. But what I'm here to talk about is actually this guy. That's Max in 2022. He's a couple of months old, and he's really, really cute, except that it's 4:45 a.m. And if any of you are parents, quick show of hands, how many parents do we have? Yeah, there's a few in here. You know this. Yeah, you know, when you've got the baby and he's not sleeping, finally he's sleeping. And the only way he would sleep is if he was on my chest at 4:45 in the morning. And because of that, in 2022, I started watching a lot of YouTube. And in 2022, certainly when I was watching YouTube, I got a lot of this. Oh my God, AI can do this, AI can do that. AI is going to replace everything, right? Life hacks, what you want, it's all there, right? And I thought, great, let's have a look at this, right? So I thought, great, I need to learn more about AI and figure out how that's going to actually affect the design industry. So let me go back, actually more than a decade. 2013 is when I did like one of my first talks at a conference about, you know, what service design thinking is. Back then, I'll have to admit, I basically read a book, The Elements of Experience Design, and recreated that in a talk. I then talked about how fintechs are going to, you know, take over the banks. It didn't happen, thank God, because I still have a job. I then talked about fraud and how we can prevent it, how there's human elements in it. And then I came to 2022, and I talked about digital identities. So there's all these various nerdy things that I get really, really passionate about, and design was the latest one. And again, my son features very, very heavily. No, that's not my son. That's my son in 2024. So he has grown up and is doing all kinds of funky things. And again, if you know anything, there was a massive health scare when he was in 2022, but he's all good now. So you might be thinking, Phil, why are you telling me all of this, right? We had all these amazing speakers talking about the technical details of AI and, you know, how to use it and where it's come from, etc. And I want to bring it back to how I've used it and how I think in the future and right now, you guys can use it. So when I think about how I prepare for a conference, right, there's a few standard steps, like I'm going to think about the topic that I want to talk about, right? I'm going to read a bunch. I'm going to summarize a bunch. I'm going to maybe write a bunch, right? See how I can break that down. I'm going to edit that, and then I'm going to prepare some slides, right? So yeah, your steps could be different, but these are my steps, right? And you might be rightly thinking that in 2024, if I go to a conference, everything can just be done by Gemini and ChatGPT. And there is a certain element of truth to that, but not quite. So certainly when it comes to searching, I can ask ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, any of those things to think, hey, what do you think about this topic? What do you think about that topic? Certainly reading is much, much easier. Certainly summarizing is much, much easier because I can go like, hey, take this 500-page PDF and summarize it in 10 bullet points. Still need to check it, but it's much easier. Writing it, editing certainly. Interestingly, if you've ever tried any AI generator for slides, they're a bit crap, right? Like standard images, layouts, etc. So I certainly still do my own slides. Now, we've had a bit of a primer, a technical one, and a bit of a history lesson, but for me to understand AI and how it affects design, I kind of looked at it from a slightly different perspective. So from a historical perspective, again, like we heard, AI isn't new. We had the Turing test. We had Eliza, great demo of Eliza. Eliza, if you think about it, the first chat interface, right? And the cool thing, and certainly in the 60s when they looked at it, it was like, well, it responds, so therefore I start empathizing with it, right? And people got very excited about that. In the 70s and 80s, we had a bit of a AI winter, because basically we didn't have enough computing power. And I don't know about you, how many of you remember computers in the 80s, like at 286, 16 megahertz, 32 megabytes of hard disk? Yeah, I remember that. My dad bought one of those, I think, in 1987. He was really proud of it. It cost something like a small car, and then within a year it was already outdated. So that was his computer winter. And then in the 90s, it was still crap because we still didn't have enough data and we still didn't have enough compute, so it all still sucked, basically. And then the later 90s came and Deep Blue, Kasparov beat Deep Blue, which was great. I love that story about, like, they won and then they shut it down. Like, leave, winner, all good. And 2000s, I mean, we all remember big data. Big data. I worked in consulting in 2007, 2008, and it was all about big data. And I really didn't understand what it was. It was just like Will said, we have bigger computers. They can churn through bigger spreadsheets, basically, and databases. And then came, all the 2010s when, ChatGPT and Gemini came. Now, in terms of how AI actually works, there's a few things to understand. Artificial intelligence is not the same as machine learning. Rather, what it is you have AI as a field. Within that, you have machine learning, and within that, you have deep learning. Now, what does that mean? So, my clicker works, hopefully? Yes. So within machine learning, you have supervised machine learning, right? Where essentially you have data that's labeled, right? It says, right, this is good, this is bad, this is fraud, this is not fraud. You also have unsupervised data where the machine is just trying to spot patterns, right? So it sees, right, a bunch of, let's say in banking, transactions, and it tries to identify which ones are fraudulent and which ones are not. Deep learning then takes that one level down and it looks at, okay, well, how can I apply that to a specialist task? So machine learning plus neural networks is effectively what we have in deep learning. I'm not technical enough to go into the details of neural networks. All I need to know is that it's super, super fancy in terms of like basically behaving like a brain, right? And so what you have in deep learning is discriminative models, right? Which look at, say, a dog or a cat, and it says, okay, well, that's a dog and a cat. And then we have lots of labeled data, dog, cat, dog, cat, dog, cat, dog, cat. And based on that, we can say, that's a dog. Amazing. Generative, and this is what the stuff is that you guys are playing around with most of the time in, Gen AI, in ChatGPT, etc. You've got a dog. You've got some characteristics that make it, a dog, like ears, this way, whiskers, etc. And then based on learning a lot of these characteristics, you can then say, right, we're going to create a whole new dog. Now, the question that you need to then ask yourself is Gen AI really new? Well, yes and no. All it is it looks at all the data that it has ingested and then generates something new based on that. So as a rule of thumb, it can't actually create anything new. And it's the same thing with creativity. If you really think about like how we get inspired by something, we don't suddenly come out of nothing, right? We see a bunch of things, websites, art, thingies, toys, phones, whatever it might be. We munge all of that together and then we're like, oh, here's a new one. And what you don't maybe realize is that it's just a munging up of all the stuff that you've already seen, which is why a lot of stuff just looks very, very similar. And Gen AI isn't different in that respect. So the question then is like, is it actually creative? Well, it sort of is, because it can create something new, and it can't very well tell you how it came up with that. And it's sort of creative in the same way that as humans, we come up with something new and we think it's something brand new, but Gen AI has actually come out with something that it has looked at all the websites and all the text in the internet. So it is sort of new. So one question that I hope all of you are asking yourself is AI coming for your job? Well, yes, it is. Although, yes and no. I mean, there's a little bit more nuance to it, and I'll actually show you something who is coming for your job at the very end of the presentation. So in design, we have our crafts. We love our crafts, right? Like our hand-drawn drawings and all that good stuff. And the crafts that I'm going to be talking about are obviously user research, UX. Apologies, by the way, if you're a product designer rather than a UX designer. If you're an interaction designer, I kind of munge all of those together. We can have a discussion in the pub about that. Service designers, writing, copywriters, or content designers, as you like to be called these days. And then, of course, visual designers. So one thing that struck me when I started thinking about all of this was actually how AI is used. And in 2023, there was a fantastic survey called, AI usage in UX. And it came up with this graph, and it was like, oh my God, lots of people are using AI. This is fantastic, right? Until I looked at the numbers, and I was like, right, let's go into a little bit more details. But if you look at the actual scale of it, right? This had 3,000 respondents, right? And the scale up here is, up to 450. If you look into the details here, you can actually see that in smaller organizations, you have bigger AI usage than in larger organizations. And I can tell you that for a fact because I work for a large organization, and I can tell you probably that there's not as much AI usage by the people on the ground as we would like it to be. So if you look there, right, yes, often it's actually not that much. And like I said, if you put this into actual scale, it's not that big at all. And this is 2023. And just when Pablo was actually talking about how many people are using AI, I'm actually going to be really interested to see how many of you are using AI. So whip out your phones and fill in this very, very quick form. It's literally 2 questions. Go for it. I'm going to have a little bit of data from various conferences, so we can see whether that's changed, right? Because when Pablo asked, there was only a handful of hands there. So, right, phones, yeah, phones coming down. Excellent, very good. So let's look at user research first. If we look at the history of user research, user research as such isn't new, right? In the 50s and 60s, we talked about ergonomics, human factors. That's my original background. Human-computer interaction, usability testing in the 70s and 80s, and then the big term, UX. 2013, I actually met Jesse James Garrett at that conference, and I was like, oh my God, UX superstar. He wrote literally the book on UX. 2000s was all about user-centered design, journey maps, and now in the 2020s, this is actually quite cool, where we can create AI personas, we can create entire AI research, right? How many researchers do we have in the crowd? Yeah, quite a few. Excellent. So with that in mind, do you remember what you had for breakfast today? How many? Put your hands up if you know. Yeah, you know. Okay, cool. Keep your hands up. Keep your hands up. Keep your hands. We're going to do this like exercise here. If you remember what you had yesterday. Yeah, yep. Still a few putting it down. Last week, exactly same day. Yeah. Last month? Yeah. A year ago? Oh, there's a few, okay? So my point with this is, and I've seen this again and again and again, with user research, we are rubbish at remembering things, okay? And certainly when it comes to user research, right, people go like, oh my God, I did this amazing piece of research. Look, here's the report. Here's everything that we've done, blah, 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 blah. Stakeholders love it. Awesome, right? What's my next project? Cool, I'm moving on to the next project. And then I'm going to move on to the next project. And then I'm going to move on to the next one. And then it's like, okay, and what happened to the one that you did 5 months ago? So what happens all the time is that we lose knowledge. Right? So where did all the stuff go that we did a year ago? Or when I came back into working in mortgages, I thought 5 years later, we've solved mortgages. Where's all the research? It's like, yeah, it's on somebody's laptop. It's on a SharePoint somewhere. It's in a PowerPoint. So AI can drastically help with that, or hopefully it will. So to look at in a user research what AI can be good at is AI is great for data analysis. Right? Like take lots of interviews, everything that's been transcribed. Like you shouldn't have to listen to hours and hours of, interviews and say like, oh, well, they did that, and I definitely did that in 2001. But AI can massively help you with that. Obviously, can summarize that, right? Just take text and say 10 bullet points. And it can help you automate things. So all the stuff that you do again and again and again, right? So create a template for, research reports, create a user briefing, all of those things, you can automate all of that. The problem that you, of course, have with AI is it lacks context, right? So it it needs supervision, right? You need to always double check its homework for now anyways, right? I mean, I'd say we're still in the early days of AI, and it can't tell you why something happens. It can tell you, like, oh, here's a summary of all the things that I think you need to think about, right? But it can't necessarily tell you why, right? And that's definitely something that AI, for now anyways, will not replace in humans, right? The ability to go back to the humans and listen, right? So definitely use AI for research planning, right? So all the templates, everything, all the documents that you need to generate out of that, do that in there. Research that data analysis, personas. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of personas because I'm like, behavior, put it into something that is a person is, way too often I get asked, like, have we done personas? And I'm like, why, right? Like, just because it's a document that somebody requested, but okay. And competitor analysis is definitely something that you can go straight in there, which is fantastic. Key thing to remember, though, is research data analysis, only do it if you're allowed to use it in that way. So I certainly in the bank am not allowed to put, right, customer data into ChatGPT. People would be very, very unhappy if I did that. And if you're a smaller, say, outfit, be careful, right, with the data that you feed ChatGPT, because it learns based on the data. So if there's anything personal in there, just be careful. UX design. How many UX designers do we have in the room? Lots. Excellent. So I'm not going to go too much into the history because you all know this, right? All the good stuff. But 2000 Jesse James Garrett elements of user experience is great. The thing about UX design is we love our crafts, right? Oops, somebody giggled. I like that. How many of you are sketchnoting right now? Is anybody sketchnoting? Yes, there's at least one person. 10, oh, 2, excellent, love it. Right, 10 years ago, there would have been at least 15 of you guys in here. Right? Sketchnoting was all the rage. And UX design is my background, right? That's where I came from, like prototyping, UI design. If you ever want to know what I've ever done, is go to the NHS blood donation service. The booking system is the only project I've ever done where my high fidelity prototype was translated pixel by pixel into a perfect code. I was like, oh my God. It's beautiful. Well, it certainly was 12 years ago or so. If anything sucks about it, please tell me. I can pass on the feedback. I still, funnily enough, have access to their data dashboard to see how many people are using it, because they haven't changed the password in 12 years. It's great. But yeah, we love our craft, right? Now, the question, of course, is how many of you love wireframing? Hands up if you love wireframing. There's a few of you, okay? And Pablo was saying, like, look at all these children that did, the hand-drawn, prototypes and everything. And that's fantastic, right? But if you work in an organization like the one I do, like a massive bank or an agency where you need to do stuff really, really quickly, wireframing is something that takes up a lot of time, right? If you were going to, put out a user journey. So imagine a world where you put in a prompt like this one, like create an onboarding journey for a user who wants to get a mortgage, obviously, because I look after mortgages at Lloyds Banking Group, right? And they don't know where to start, right? And imagine you come up with this, and boom, here you go. Here's your first wireframes, right? Now, I did this in under 60 seconds, right? And I'm not saying this is perfect at all, right? But I can do this in under 60 seconds, and then I can do 15 variations thereof, and then start using it. I can feed it a design system. I can do things like say, hey, do it in the style of Barclays, in case I want to imitate them, right? I'm Lloyds. So I can do all kinds of things in there, which is fantastic. Or I can create sitemaps, like at a high level, which is really, really cool. But not only that, and I loved this because I gave a similar talk at a conference in Prague in Czech Republic for Superbank. I said, do this in Czech, and it does it in Czech, or Arabic, or English, or French, or German, whatever you want, right? So again, suddenly, and this is especially relevant for you designers who work in smaller outfits, you can suddenly compete with big international agencies because you can crank this stuff out in multiple languages, right? And again, I'm not saying this is perfect, right? But it's a really, really good starter for 10 to, create something out of the box. So if I think about UX, what's happening right now, I only need to look as far as Skyscanner. Is anybody from Skyscanner here? No? No, I saw somebody from Expedia, so competitor to you. And I looked at this the other day, and I was like, right, I need to find a flight, right? So I want to fly, say, from London. I want to go to Prague because that's where my parents live. I need to put in a date. I then need to put in a return date. I need to figure out like how many people are going to fly. The age of my son who's going to fly with me. He's 2.5 now. And then I search, although I pretended that he's 1 because then he flies for free. And then, oh no, something's not working because, I don't know, I didn't put in, I don't know, a code or something. Oh, right, yeah, I didn't put the flight code in there, so that was frustrating. So now I know I need to put in PRG, which is frustrating, but okay. Error messages, I would have really loved one. And then, I get lots and lots of results, right? So you can see if I scroll down, right, there's lots and lots of results. So if I go back up, you can see, oh shit, there's 773 results. Like, that's a lot, right? Luckily, there's a UX designer at Skyscanner who's thought about this, and they're like, 773 is really, really difficult for Phil to look at. We can help him with that. And we're going to say, right, the best option, the cheapest, the fastest, right? So he's already pre-filtered it down for me, which is, great. Why not? And so if you think about what I just had to do, right? I'm a user, right? And I have to interact with a system. I have to input data. The system then outputs data to me, right? This used to be done in the desktop. Now it's probably done on a mobile or both, right? The other day I saw a really funny meme where somebody says like, big important decisions I still have to do on a big computer. So not on my mobile, right? Bank account, mobile, mortgage, big computer. And so that hasn't changed, right? Like form, input, output, right? And what I have to do with the output is I then have to consider the 773 things and like I break that down or break it down to the faster or slower or cheaper or whatever it might be. But still there's like a lot of back and forth, right? And so what this really is web form design. Right? Because if you think about it, right? Selecting, inputting, selecting, button pressing, right? It's that. How many of you have read this book? Web Form Design by Luke Wroblewski. Crazy last name. And this came out in 2008. And is I think this is probably the only design book or UX book that I have actually read back to back. I've read lots of other books, but not necessarily for. This is the one book that I actually read back to back. And the crazy thing about it is things haven't changed. Whoops. No. So things haven't changed when it comes to UX. Now, the thing that I would like to consider is then with AI, things can change because I don't necessarily have to interact with a form. I could actually have a conversation as if it was almost a human being, right? Now, the human being or the AI could know like what my bank balance is, what my calendar availability is, all these things. So I can think about, okay, well, I need to be in Prague on Friday by 1700, and off it goes, right? And I might not think about it anymore, right? And the AI might come back to me and says like, hey, I found a few things which fit your budget and everything. I'd be like, yeah, cool. Which one should I book? But what's different here is that I might start with voice, I might switch over to a screen, I might go back to voice, I might go back to different devices, right? So if you're a UXer, I really need you to think beyond just a screen, right? And that's, of course, the problem with product. People often come to you and say, like, oh, I just need a screen for this search, right? You need to step back and think about all the different interaction models that you could potentially have. How many service designers do we have in the room? Yes. Okay, a few service designers. Again, I'm not going to bore you with the history of service design. All to say, service design has massively grown, obviously. Like every large organization will have great service designers. But the thing that I would like you to consider is, remember this, right? Post-it notes. We love our post-it notes. We love our walls with post-it notes. And if we don't love our walls with post-it notes, now we have fig jams. Fig jams after fig jam after fig jam after fig jam. So many. And like, if I try to make sense of all the fig jams that I've seen, like, there's too much. Absolutely too much. And we've seen tools that help us make sense of that, which is fantastic. You still need to double check it, but they help us make sense of it. The thing that I'd like you to consider is, I went on holiday a couple of months ago, and for me, that was a holiday that was like an 11 out of 10, right? I took my drone, flew it into the sunset, had a most fantastic time. The staff was lovely, the hotel was clean, the food was superb, okay? And I had a 2-year-old with me who, can be an a-hole sometimes. But they were all super friendly. So when he was kicking up a fuss, they cleaned up. I mean, it looked like a mess every time we left dinner, but they were so nice. And that's the thing. The service that I experienced in that hotel is something that AI cannot replace. Somebody had to think, right? How can I provide an experience for a guest who's tired, exhausted, stressed, who just wants to get away, right? And how can we make this all work together? The cleaning staff, the bar staff, the people that, sort out the pools, all of those things, right? And that, for me, in terms of service design, is where magic happens. Yes, an AI can pull together a blueprint for you, right? But actually making that happen, having that impact, that's not there yet. So service designers, I would say, if you're good at your job, don't worry. I think AI is not going to replace you just yet. Right, Lillian? Woo! Now, how many visual designers do we have in the room? Excellent, a few, okay? And I loved Pablo's illustrations. They were beautiful. However, I've also seen lots of mediocre design, right? Certainly if you think WordPress, it's everywhere, right? As we all know, WordPress runs, 60% of the internet. Statistic might be wrong, but it's quite a significant chunk. And they all look the same. All the templates, like big hero image, columns, buttons, a few icons. It's all the same. And if you let AI do the visual design, it's all going to look also the same. However, if you are passionate about your craft, you can definitely, go into the details and then consider brand elements. And I've seen this just now where Lloyds Banking Group rebranded, released a new app, and our designers actually went into the archives, tried to understand, where the horse is coming from. Horse is called Kankara. We now have a new design operating system called Kankara OS, which is fantastic. And you can see and you can feel how there was a lot of attention to detail. So AI can be, to me, a mediocre designer, but used with somebody who's actually very strong at what they do and goes into the detail, it can be fantastic. Now, of course, I've played around with DALL-E, and I'd say, right, I'd like to create a mix between Yoda from Star Wars and Mr. T from the A-Team. Now, hopefully you all know what they look like. If you don't, that's Yoda, and that's Mr. T. So I was like, right, let's see what it comes up with. So it then goes, okay, let's create a character that combines all the characteristics. I'm like, yep, love it, all good, go for it, right? Do you want to change anything about it? I was like, nope, this is all good, right? And off it went, and it said, oof, I can't do that because of copyright. And at another conference, I was listening to talk about AI and legal and copyright and everything. And trust me, I got very, very scared. Because if you think about it, AI just takes everything and just remunges it, right? So depending on where it got the data from, you might be in murky territory when it comes to legal things. But he's like, no, I'll change the description and I'll come up with something. I'm like, yes, go for it. And there it is. Love it. No, that's not bad. And I'm not a visual designer. I could have not done this in Photoshop. So, off I go. And I'm like, let's continue this, right? So I'm like, ooh, it's Yoda. Let's make him a bit more hench, right? It's got more muscular, right? Oh, and also, can you make sure that you remove his sleeves? Because, I've got to see his guns, right? So off we go. There we go, Mr. Toda. Right, love it. This is all good. But it's not Star Wars-y enough, right? Because to make it proper Star Wars-y, what do we need? Thank you. So I said, yes, I need a green lightsaber. Can anybody tell me why it's a green one and not a red one? Exactly, he's a good guy. Thank you. I didn't plant them. So off we go. Oh, shit. This might actually be painful. So not quite there yet. So I'm like, right, okay, can you make sure that he holds it away from him, right, with two hands? And I'm like, boom, there you go. Interestingly, DALL-E didn't listen to me because I said 2 hands. But then I was like, all right, that's not too bad. So, that was good. Now, when it comes to content design, how many content designers do we have here? I know Lorraine's here, so that's good, content designer. I love you guys. But, no, Lorraine's going to hate, she's going to take me out saying, Oh, Phil, I still need it. And yes, you're absolutely still needed, because I think if you know how to use AI, it can massively help you, right? I'm not saying that AI is just going to replace you. I mean, in some places, right? In some places that cannot afford a content designer, yes, potentially it might replace, or they might just go the shortcut of AI. But I think together, right, where AI helps you, certainly with Grammarly and all these good things, AI can make a massive difference. So what happens next? And this is the bit where hopefully you're going to get something useful out of this, right? First thing, start using AI, right? And there's a website called There's an AI for That, right? Take a picture of that or just Google There's an AI for That, and there's hundreds of AIs, right? Start using AI, okay? I'll be really curious to know how many people are actually using AI, right? If you haven't done it, just go for it, right? Because if you don't, you might have a problem. Learn to prompt. Lots of people have told you this. This is a prompt, right? The basic elements of a good prompt are you give it a persona, right? Why, who are you, what is it that you're doing? Give it some context, give it a specific task, give it a format, give it some tone, right? Those are the basic elements. Right? Take a picture of that, you can rewrite a prompt like that, right? And the better you get at prompt engineering, like Hannah said this morning, right, the better the output's going to be, okay? And that allows you to then experiment, right? I went to another conference where they said, right, AI isn't everything, right? Because you still need the basics of UX, right? You still need to understand who your users are, what problem you're trying to solve, right? The problem space, you need to test it out. It's really challenging, of course, with AI, because as we've heard, is the data is the experience. How are you going to replicate that, right? And you still need to focus on the UX. Doesn't matter whether you have AI or not. And also, just by slapping an AI chat interface on it doesn't make it a good AI usage, right? So, like I said, in UX, think about like all the different elements and how you could interact. That's where it gets really, really interesting. The other thing that we did, actually, no, Lillian did, sorry, we ran an AI design sprint. So we're all big fans of design sprints, like, hey, let's create something in a week, right? So we set ourselves the challenge with Lillian. It's like, no, let's do everything in an afternoon, right? So we created an AI design sprint, and you can Google that, right? So we stole that from somewhere else. We posed ourselves some challenges. The one that I looked at was home ownership as a service. And for that, I created a prompt. Now, said prompt looked like this. It's a massive prompt, and it's got the same element, right? Your persona, you're a bank, right? There's a whole bunch of, there's a whole bunch of context, right? Because the better you explain the context, the better the output's going to be. We gave it a specific task, you gave it a format, and we gave it some tone, right? You can take a picture of that if you want, right? Very, very useful. And off it went, and it created a fantastic press release, which was a really good starting point for what we wanted it to do. Not only that, it also created a bunch of assets for us, right? Again, not perfect, but it's a fantastic starter for 10 that we wanted to use as how we can think about a product offering, right? Would we use this branding? Of course not, right? But if we wanted to say, I don't know, talk about funding, or should we take this further, right? We could use some of these as stimulus, which was really, really good. And then, of course, we came to one of my favorite bits, which is we went to an AI song generator. I said, okay, we want you to create something super engaging, right? And then you can tell me which song you like best. There's 3 of them, right? So. The thing was called Evervest.
Got dreams, we got the way. Evervest here to make it pay. Build your future, step by step.
You get that with dad dancing as well.
Your game in rap.
All right. Okay, is that? Love it. Right. Okay. How about song number 2?
You got dreams, we got the way.
A little bit, speedier, more rocky. All right.
Build your future step by step with every move you're gaining.
And last but not least,
no more.
Song number 3. Oh. There we go. Song number 3. You know, thinking like girl band, 2000s.
Making all your wishes come true. With every step, you're building more. Gritty like never before.
Probably not Christmas number 1, but, why not? And this was free, right? I mean, I signed in with 3 different email addresses to get this going, but why not, right? Now, of course, the other thing you need to consider, and lots of people have said this, don't blindly trust this. Can I train 8 days a week? Well, Gemini says, yes, of course you can. Gemini doesn't say that anymore. That was a couple of months ago. Check with ChatGPT, it says, maybe it's not advisable. So do compare. And that's definitely one of the things that I do when I do conferences, right? Compare Gemini, Perplexity, all those things to see what they actually come up with. So training 8 days a week is not quite there yet. So the question that I want to come back to is, who's really coming for your job? I want to play you a video of the guy who's actually coming for your job, and he's working on getting your job right now.
Hey Google.
Hey Google. Play Coco Melon.
Hey Google. Play Happy in the Witch by Coco Melon. Hey Google. And the music landing space.
Music landing speaker.
Hey Google. And the music dining space.
Music dining room speaker. So this is my son at bedtime trying to speak to Google and not going to bed. Now, he's, of course, very, very cute, and I can't fault him for, trying not to sleep. But the thing that we have to realize is, for him, this is going to be completely normal. He won't know a CD, he won't know a tape deck or a record player, right? For him, voice interaction is going to be completely normal. And asking things to do things for him is going to be completely normal. Now, when he's in his, 20s and he does all of this, it's going to be vastly different, right? And in 20 years' time, you'll be like, I'll be way retired, right? But at some point, designers that know how to design for these types of experiences are going to be way better. So AI usage now, let's have a quick look if I can reload this. I will share all of that data. There we go. Lots of people in big companies, and we still occasionally, the vast majority of you do stuff occasionally, and there's, 116 people who do stuff very often. So thank you very much. That's all I have for you today. If you have any questions about any of the stuff that I talked about, please come and talk to me during the break.